to a discussion between Sir Karl Popper and Sir John Eccles.
Για να ακούσουμε κάτι κοιτάνε στη διανόηση του 20ου αιώνα. Ο Ποππερ ήταν ψιλοσπάνια μορφή, δεν υπήρχε παρόμοιά του, γιατί έπιασε τα όρια της φιλοσοφίας του προηγούμενου αιώνα και άγγιξε την κοινωνική μετάβαση, ας το πούμε έτσι, σε μια ανοιχτή κοινωνία που ήταν η δικιά του ιδέα και σχολίαζε επίσης και τα όρια της τεχνολογίας. Γενικά οι Γερμανοί φιλόσοφοι άρχισαν να ενσωματώνουν τη βιομηχανική θέση της χώρας στη διανόηση και να την αναλύουν και να την τοποθετούν ξανά σε βάθος χρόνου ως προς το μέλλον, φαντάζομαι, της Γερμανίας, αλλά κυρίως της ανθρώπινης φυλής.
Karl and Sir John are close friends on a personal and philosophical level. I hope and suppose that just this cooperation between the philosophic.
Εν τω μεταξύ, τώρα οι φιλόσοφοι που έχουμε εντός εισαγωγικών στην εποχή μας είναι. Δεν από το όνομά του. Ξεκινάει από. Και καταλήγει σε Peterson.
And scientific approach of problems will make this discussion an intellectual event of the first order. Sir Karl, one of the dangerous pitfalls in this kind of philosophical debates is the general misunderstanding between the expectations of the public, who is looking after philosophers as old, wise men, wiser in any case than other men, and the theoretical talks of philosophers, who often deny they are wiser, but still have enormous pretensions. What's your opinion about yourself as a philosopher and other philosophers in relation to the expectations of the public?
I do think that we all have our philosophies.
Μέχρι τότε μιλάμε για ένα public, για ένα κοινό που περίμενε τις απόψεις των φιλοσόφων για το μέλλον της για την πορεία της καθημερινότητας και το μέλλον της ανθρωπότητας. Τώρα που δεν υπάρχουν οι φιλόσοφοι αυτοί, οι φιλόσοφοι αυτής της βαρύτητας τουλάχιστον, οι άνθρωποι έχουν παραδοθεί στην τεχνοκρατία, την οποία την έχουν φτιάξει κάποιοι, οι οποίοι από αυτοί βγάζουν πολύ καλά κέρδη και δεν σου επιτρέπουν να σκεφτείς για το τι ακριβώς γίνεται.
And most of our philosophies are not very much right. That is to say, I do think, certainly of myself, not as wise, but it's the very opposite of wise.
Εντάξει, ότι πας είναι Γερμανός και μπορεί να επικοινωνεί σε πάρα πολύ ψηλό επίπεδο στα αγγλικά. Για όποιον δεν το ξέρει, δεν το έχει δοκιμάσει, είναι πάρα πολύ δύσκολο να μπορείς να το κάνεις σε δύο γλώσσες. Όχι να μιλάς ελληνικά και μετά να μιλάς αγγλικά, ξέρω εγώ, σε ένα καλό επίπεδο. Σου μιλάω να μιλάς αγγλικά εχμής και γερμανικά εχμής.
And I think that the main task of philosophy is to examine critically the various philosophies which various people hold uncritically.
And what's your opinion about philosophers, Sir John?
Well, I suppose...
Εντάξει, η φιλοσοφία, έτσι πως την ορίζει αυτός, είναι αυτό που ορίζει την τεχνητή νοημοσύνη τώρα. Να εκπαιδεύεται με τα δεδομένα που παράγει η ίδια. Δεν ξέρω.
I suppose I should start off also at the beginning, like Sir Karl. I, at the age of 17 or 18 as a medical student, suddenly came up against the problem, what am I? What is the meaning of my existence as I experience it? And I proceeded to read quite a lot about what the philosophers had said and the psychologists, and was profoundly dissatisfied with it. So I decided that I didn't know enough about the brain, and the brain was the essence of all my consciousness.
Πάρα πολύ σωστός. Η νευρολογία άρχισε να μπαίνει λίγο στα ραντάρ γενικά της ανθρώπινης ύπαρξης στο τέλος του 9ου αιώνα και του 20ου, και που είναι πάρα πολύ αργά αν το σκεφτείς. Η φιλοσοφία ξεκίνησε από το 3.500 π.Χ. επίσημα και άρχισαν να κοιτάνε με τον ανθρώπινο εγκέφαλο και να θεωρούν τη φιλοσοφία ως περιορισμό του ανθρωπίνου εγκεφάλου. Έναν αιώνα πριν από αυτό που είμαστε τώρα, δηλαδή πάρα πολύ πρώτο. Είναι εμβρυϊκό το στάδιο της φιλοσοφίας ουσιαστικά, της πλήρους φιλοσοφίας.
Everything that I knew myself to be, my memories and imaginings, so on. So, what did I do? I decided that I would learn something myself about it, and I became a neuroscientist and went to Shellington and Oxford and worked.
Αυτό που λέγαμε χτες, άμα θες να καταλάβεις κάτι, δεν υπάρχει κάποιος που να το ξέρει όλο, άρα δεν να κάτσεις να το καταλάβεις μόνος σου.
And worked with him, and spent, I thought, in a few years I could know enough about the brain and how it worked, and then I could come back and attack the philosophers on their own grounds, and the psychologists also, and my life has been...
Από πλευρά θεωρίας παιχνιών, ότι πας να κάνει κάτι πολύ σωστό, Γιατί είναι πολύ πιο εύκολο ένας παλαιστής να πλακώσει το ξύλο έναν μποξέρ, ο οποίος δεν ξέρει πάλι, και ο παλαιστής ξέρει λίγο box, να αμυνθεί, από έναν μποξέρ να πλακωθεί με έναν μποξέρ, και τότε είναι 50-50. Αν ένας παλαιστής με έναν μποξέρ δεν έχει καμία ελπίδα. Αν ο παλαιστής ξέρει και box.
Has been a matter of progressive postponement of that because I got so intensely interested and involved in how the brain works. But I have come back to it, and in the last year or so I have had some of my lectures produced as a book, which is coming to, that's why I'm here, I suppose, because I did write the book on philosophy. It's personalist philosophy, and it gives you my thoughts now.
So Karl, can you explain in a nutshell the meaning of your famous falsifiability criterion in relation with your critical philosophy?
Yes. When I was about 19, so 2 years older than Sir John Eccles, when he had a similar experience, I was struck by the tremendous difference between the attitude of physicists towards physics and the attitude of some psychologists towards psychology. What interested me so much was the following. Einstein, who at that time became very famous because he had predicted a certain effect in eclipses. He had predicted that if you observe the sun during an eclipse, then the stars near the sun become visible upon you, and these visible stars would appear to be further removed from each other than they would be at other occasions. Now, Einstein became very famous at this time, and what struck me was that he repeatedly said, he made certain predictions, and then repeatedly said, if this prediction should turn out wrongly, then my theory is false. Now, try to think of something similar about Freud, who also at that time became very famous. Try to think what possibly could a man do, what couldn't be explained by psychoanalysis, whether he jumps into a sea, into a lake, or whether he...
Αυτό ακριβώς, Χρυσόστομε, λέω και εγώ τόσο καιρό, ότι αν θες να αποκαλείς τον εαυτό σου επιστήμονα ως ψυχίατρος, πρέπει να μπορείς να τα ερμηνεύεις όλα. Γιατί ένας φυσικός μπορεί να τα ερμηνεύσει όλα ως ένα μοντέλο θεωρίας με έναν αριθμό παρατηρήσεων. Ένας ψυχίατρος δεν μπορεί να τα ερμηνεύσει όλα. Δηλαδή, αν ένας άνθρωπος αρχίσει. Θα σου δώσω τις πιο ακραίες περιπτώσεις ανθρώπων που έχω μελετήσει. Ο Αντρέι Τσικατήλο. Αν ένας ψυχίατρος μελετήσει έναν ανθρωποφάγο και τα λοιπά πράγματα, όποιος δεν θα πω άλλα πράγματα, όπως θέλει να διαβάσει τη ζωή του, και να ερμηνεύσει ακριβώς γιατί έγινε έτσι, δεν θα μπορέσει να το ερμηνεύσει. Αυτό είναι το πιο περίεργο. Και ούτε θα μπορεί να προβλέψει ποιος θα είναι ο επόμενος. Άρα οι θεωρίες είναι ψηλό αρπακόλα και τα φάρμακα μπαίνουν και εκεί στην εξίσωση και γίνεται ακόμα πιο ασαφές το πεδίο. Και τώρα, τέλος πάντων, έχει αρχίσει να γίνεται επαναπροσδιορισμός του τι είναι θηλυκός και αντρικός οργανισμός, και η ψυχολογία και η ψυχιατρική, ξέρω εγώ, πρέπει να προσαρμοστεί και να προσαρμοστούν σε αυτά. Και τέλος πάντων, ναι. Η ερώτηση γενικά απλώνεται απλά η ψυχιατρική πρέπει να αρχίσει να περιορίζεται κάποια στιγμή.
throws a child into the lake and jumps after it and takes with his life danger the child out. There could be no conceivable action of a person which could not be explained in psychoanalytic terms. But there can be very many things which cannot be explained in Newtonian terms or in Einsteinian terms. If this glass, which contains incidentally apple juice, if this glass would begin to hop just along, and we investigate it and find there's nothing unusual with this glass, then we would have to give up many physical theories, especially Newtonian mechanics, and with it even Einsteinian theory. Einsteinian theory can explain a lot, but this object it could not explain. As opposed to this, let us say our chairman would begin to hop, then this could be very easily explained in psychoanalytic terms. Here see the difference.
Ακριβώς. Αν αρχίσει μια καρέκλα να πηδάει, οι θεωρίες φυσικής φεύγουν από το παράθυρο. Αν αρχίσει ένας άνθρωπος να χοροπηδάει, στα πλαίσια της ψυχιατρικής πάντα θα βρεθεί μια θεωρία αρπακόλα να το εξηγήσει. Αυτό είναι εντάξει.
Between two ways of things which both call themselves science. And I said that what is characteristic of genuine science is that it can be refuted by experience.
Δεν ήξερα αυτόν τον άνθρωπο να το γνωρίσω, να του σφίξω το χέρι και να το φιλήσω 3 φορές. Έχω φάει το μίσος, να πούμε, τις δεκαετίες από άτομα που τους προσπαθώ να τους εξηγήσω ότι ο τομέας που σπουδάζουν δεν είναι επιστημονικός. Βασίζεται σε κάποιους τομείς οι οποίοι είναι επιστημονικοί, 3 επιστήμες, μαθηματικά, φυσική και χημεία, αλλά δεν είναι ο τομέας όλων του τομέα επιστημονικός. Δεν μπορείς να κάνεις προβλέψεις και απορρίψεις με βεβαιότητα. Άρα, μιλάς απλά. Φαντάζεσαι, ξέρω, εικάζεις.
That is to say that something like this is conceivable, which would refute it. Well, a science is not genuine if whatever happens, it is always right.
Ναι, πάνε μίλα με κανένα ψυχίατρο, πάνω ψυχολόγο. Ό,τι βγει καινούριο, το ξέρω εγώ. Θα σου το πω εγώ. Πότε βγήκε? Πριν 1 ώρα. Θα σου απαντήσω εγώ, ξέρω ακριβώς τι είναι. Αυτή είναι η λογική όλων των φιλοσόφων, όλων των ψυχιάτρων, ψυχολόγων, κοινωνιολόγων, δεν ξέρω και εγώ τι.
If a so-called science is such that it can explain anything you want, then I said it was a pseudoscience.
But can you demonstrate, Sir Karl, what's the superiority of your falsified
Τελικά οι άνθρωποι που γουστάρω έζησαν πριν από μένα γάμο του.
validity criterion in relation to the verified validity criterion or principle of the logical positivist of the Vienna Circle?
Yes. It so happens that all this happens in the year 1900, about 1919. I'm wrong, I was not 19 but 17, I believe. It happened in the year 1919, and several years later in Vienna, I'm born in Vienna and grew up in Vienna. Several years later in Vienna, there developed a circle of very interesting people. The circle was usually called the Vienna Circle. And this circle, under the influence of a philosopher who since has become very famous, namely Ludwig Wittgenstein, under the influence of this philosopher, this circle did engage itself in a similar problem as I did, but a different problem. There was a certain similarity and a certain difference. Let us start with the difference. The difference was that the circle looked for a criterion of sense. Now, the Vienna Circle said language falls into 2 parts. One part is nonsense. To this part belongs bibabo, or why. That is nonsense. It's
Ότι πας θα γίνει viral στο TikTok και δεν το ξέρει. Αυτά που λες δεν είναι καθόλου nonsense. Κάποιοι άνθρωποι τα ακούνε με ιερή ευλάβεια.
It's language but nonsense. And to this part belongs the whole philosophy. So is it. Only science was sense. Only science, as opposed to philosophy, was real sense. And the criterion of science was verifiability. That is to say, we could establish the certainty of the scientific proposition. If you can prove something, then it's science. And certain, and you can put it in your pocket, now you possess something. You possess certainty, and this certainty is sense. And science at the same time. So here was one difference. And I didn't say that all philosophy was nonsense, but I said that philosophy was partly non-scientific insofar as it could not be refuted. That part of philosophy which was irrefutable certainly was not scientific. For that reason it wasn't necessarily bad. There can be excellent philosophy which is not refutable. Refutability is not a criterion of sense. So I wasn't against all philosophy, and I wasn't a philosopher of sense and nonsense. The Vienna Circle made the distinction between sense and nonsense. And it so happens, and here is the similarity, it so happens that it said the criterion of sense is also the criterion of scientific character. And both is verifiability. While I said the criterion of scientific character, which is not necessarily the criterion of sense at all, is falsifiability.
Sir John, your encounter with Sir Karl, I believe in New Zealand, has been of great, perhaps decisive influence on your scientific method and your philosophy of science. Would you explain how your scientific method was before and after your meeting with Sir Karl?
Yes, well, this is a very nice thing to remember on an occasion like this. I had grown up, as I mentioned, in Oxford with Sherrington, and had accepted the ordinary philosophy of science there, namely that you do experiments, you do enough, you publish the results, you go on and do some more, and you have a good mainstream of investigation, and that as a good scientist, you should not be wrong. So I had gone on as a young man, fighting for a view of transmission between a nerve fiber and a nerve cell, the synapse or the nerve muscle junction, believing with others that this was electrical essentially. The impulse runs down the fibers of the nerve, jumps across with electrical action to the across the gap, and so goes on. Now, I won't go into all this detail, but Dale and Levy, for example, had put up for simpler and slower things. The idea that it was a chemical action, that the impulse went down, there was a secretion of acetylcholine, a special chemical substance, which moved across the gap, acted across the gap, and started the electricity off on the other side. I accepted this chemical thing for slower actions, but not for something as fast as...
Εντάξει, η χημική είναι ένα επίπεδο πάνω από την. Είναι πιο μακροσκοπική η ηλεκτρολογία, γιατί δεν μπορείς να κάθεσαι να δίνεις όλες τις ομάδες. Να τις κοιτάς όλες ένα-ένα, αλλά τις κοιτάς στο σύνολα και δίνεις χημικές ονομασίες.
As fast as when a nerve impulse runs down and a muscle fiber contracts, it takes only 1/1000th of a second to get across the gap. I thought that it couldn't be done with the finesse and speed in my chemistry. Well, I developed these views with many other people, and I think there was about half the scientific opinion for this electrical and half for the chemical. And we admitted the chemical thing, and Dale and Levy got the Nobel Prize in 36 fights, and I still fought against it. I had still believed that it was electrical, but I was getting more and more concerned that I may have made a terrible error, and that I was, as a scientist, this of course you suffer for very much, that you have, as it were, gone wrong and been almost, you might say, a failure in science. When I met Sir Karl, he came down to Dunedin, he was in Christchurch, and he came down and gave a course of lectures about falsifiability. And he inspired me enormously, because then I realized that the essential thing in science is, or there are two essential things in science. One is to have imagination, to dare, to adventure, to go with ideas beyond what you know, and then to test those ideas in the most rigorous way. You put up your brainchild and you try to shoot it down. And in that way, you advance fantastically in science. He inspired me with this. So I immediately converted my rather vaguely formulated electrical theory into and published it in a quite precise manner, and developed another electrical theory for inhibition, and that was published, and so on. And there it was now. There was something to refute. And I myself refuted it some years later, in 1951. These clear expressions of what would happen on an electrical story were shot down by our own observations in one night in Dunedin.
Let me actually interrupt and say that about in 1951 I met in Oxford a very well-known scientist, and I said to him that I was a friend of Eccles. And he said, Eccles, a very good man, but you know, the man must be a bit crazy. He refutes his own theories.
Well, you know, it's not so bad. You get a reputation. In life, you know, you want a reputation for something, to be known as distinct from everybody else. I got a great reputation, as you say, for refuting my own theories. And I don't mean refuting them, but I was particularly attacked because I enjoyed refuting them. I mean, that was supposed to be a perversion.
Νομίζω ο κορμός της φιλοσοφίας είναι οι φιλόσοφοι οι οποίοι άρχισαν από μια θεωρία, σκότωσαν όλη τη ζωή τους για να την αποδείξουν και απέτυχαν. Οπότε δημιουργήθηκε πάνω σε αυτή την αποτυχία τους μια καινούργια θεωρία για να εξηγήσει κάτι μεγαλύτερο, κάτι πιο βασικό, sorry.
A very bad scientific profession to enjoy refuting your own theories. But this is what Karl teaches us, that we have to enjoy it. We should enjoy it, because what we've done is we've discovered something. You put up an idea, if you can shoot it down, then you know that that idea is false, and that you have to move into other ideas, and that is the scientific progress. That's the way science works. Well, I am shocked too well. I'll tell you in a few moments the story. The electrical story was not all wrong. It was wrong where I had claimed it to be the case. But now many other examples are known, new since that time, of electrical transmission, working in just the way I had described, or nearly so. It wasn't so silly, you see. But, so in the book I wrote, I had to have 64, I had to have 2 chapters on electrical transmission. It's come back.
But what is really valuable in scientific theory and altogether in science is the thought, the understanding, the theory. It is a myth, a very widely believed myth, that science is mainly, the growth of science in our time is mainly due to the fact that millions and millions and billions of dollars are spent on big machines. What really makes science grow are new ideas, including false ideas. False theories are dangerous only if they are dogmatically believed. If they are investigated critically, then the false theory can be extremely...
Άρα, πρέπει να φωνάξουμε τον Καρλ Ποππερ να μας μιλήσει. Έχει πεθάνει εδώ και 60 χρόνια. Όχι, βασικά νομίζω το 2000 πέθανε. Τέλος πάντων, να μας μιλήσει για το δισεκατομμύρια δισεκατομμυρίων που πέφτουν στην ανάπτυξη υποδομών για την εκπαίδευση τεχνητής νοημοσύνης και το πώς αυτό θα οδηγήσει στην παραγωγή νέων ιδεών. Αν θα οδηγήσει στην παραγωγή νέων ιδεών.
Extremely helpful in finding out some point of the truth. Einstein when he had developed his general relativity theory of gravitation, he wrote, "This theory cannot be true. It can only be a better approximation to the truth." And he gave reason why it couldn't be true. He himself, Einstein, had not believed that he had really discovered the secret of his own theory. That makes the scientist, the technologist, he has to produce cars. The cars go often wrong, but this is a minor point which has to be overlooked, or another technologist has to be appointed who doesn't make cars which go less often wrong.
So Carl, you were just mentioning the notion of truth.
Δεν θα ήταν καθόλου ευχαριστημένος ο Καρλ Ποππερ αν ζούσε στην εποχή που τα αυτοοδηγούμενα οχήματα εντός εισαγωγικών μερικές φορές είναι ασφαλή και μερικές δεν είναι. Αυτοί οι άνθρωποι ευτυχώς που φύγανε και δεν είδαν αυτή την εποχή στην οποία ζούμε να δουν αυτή την τσαπατσουλιά που υπάρχει. Αν έβλεπε τη μηχανή για το μεγάλο γλωσσικό μοντέλο, το ChatGPT, να παράγει μπαρμπούτσαλα για απαντήσεις με αυτοπεποίθηση, θα έλεγε αυτό το πράγμα πρέπει να το κλείσουμε. Δεν μπορεί να τα παράγει με αυτοπεποίθηση. Εδώ υπάρχουν άνθρωποι που μιλάνε σωστά και δεν έχουν αυτοπεποίθηση. Και έχεις αυτό να μιλάει με αυθεντία για πράγματα που είναι λάθος.
Truth. Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by truth?
Yes, I can. It will be very trivial for most of you. A theory of truth was introduced first as a philosophical theory by Aristotle, and it was condemned by most modern philosophers around 1900 or so. And it was reinstated by a great mathematical philosopher who is at present living in Berkeley in America, Alfred Tarski. And I had the great fortune to be converted by Alfred Tarski in a similar way in which you were converted by me a little earlier. And the theory is so trivial that most of you will be disappointed. It says a statement is true if it corresponds to the facts. So truth for me means correspondence of a statement with a fact. And I do believe that very many of the statements which we hold for truth are true. I also believe that very many statements which we hold for truth are false. And I do not believe that there is a criterion to distinguish with certainty between true statements and false statements. And this is the deepest reason for the fallibility of man. Human fallibility, human mistakes are made because one can sometimes give good reasons for a thing to be true and bad reasons for a thing to be true, but never conclusive reasons for a thing to be true. One cannot generally distinguish between truth and false by a criterion. This does not mean that we shouldn't try to find truth, and it does not mean that we shouldn't get nearer and nearer to the truth. It doesn't even mean that we cannot know that we have got nearer to the truth. We can know we have got nearer to the truth, but it means that we can never know that we have reached the truth. The truth is something we haven't got in our pocket.
So John, does your conception of truth fit into the conception of Carl?
I am a neurophysiologist, and there are certain things neurophysiologists and people who work with the brains can say which cannot be contradicted. They, insofar as they go, statements approximating to the truth. At least we know where the problem is. The problem has got to a different level, shall we say. Scientifically, there are certain levels at which you work, and you gradually go to levels beyond levels. Having got a firm base, you then go further. Now, the remarkable thing about what a neurophysiologist says is that all of our knowledge of the world, everything including of our own bodies, comes to us through the senses. In the first place. We have memories, of course, and we have gradually building up ways of interpreting it through our whole lifetime's experience. But everything comes in this way. And how does it come? It comes purely by, as we investigate.
Είδες, 20ος αιώνας δεν είχαν προχωρήσει, δεν είχαν μελετήσει τόσο πολύ το DNA, ότι σε βάθος χρόνου, αν κοιτάξει όλη την ανθρώπινη φυλή, ναι, από το 1 εκατομμύριο π.Χ. μέχρι σήμερα, είναι μέσα των αισθήσεων, αλλά αν κοιτάξεις σήμερα έναν άνθρωπο, όλα όσα καταλαβαίνει και παίρνει δεν είναι μέσα από τις αισθήσεις του, αλλά είναι ήδη προγραμματισμένα μέσα του από τους δισεκατομμύρια απογόνους οι οποίοι μετέφεραν την εμπειρία, τη συνολική εμπειρία των δικών τους αισθήσεων. Δηλαδή αυτός δεν χρειάζεται να ξαναβάλει το κεφάλι του μέσα στο στόμα ενός λύκου για να δει αν θα το φαγώσει. Κάποιος άλλος το έκανε πιο πριν. Δεν χρειάζεται να βάλει το πόδι του στη φωτιά για να δει ότι θα καεί. Κάποιος άλλος το έκανε. Και με αυτό την ενστικτώδη, ας το πούμε, ανάπτυξη της φυσιολογίας του ανθρώπου, μπορείς να απορροφήσεις καινούργια ερεθίσματα. Δηλαδή να απελευθερώσεις χώρο για τις αισθήσεις σου, αυτά που έλεγε ο Μάσκ χθες, ξέρω εγώ, για να μεταφέρεις καινούριες πληροφορίες, τις οποίες δεν υπήρχε καμία δυνατότητα από τις προηγούμενες. Δηλαδή, αν θες να επικοινωνείς με έναν υπολογιστή τώρα, κάποιος που ζούσε 100 χρόνια πριν, αυτή η γνώση θα του ήταν παντελώς άχρηστη. Αλλά κάποιος ο οποίος θα είναι 100 χρόνια μετά, του είναι πολύ χρήσιμη.
Investigate with physics and chemistry and so on. It comes by wavelengths of different character. It comes by sounds, conjuries. It's not sounds by air, waves, pressure waves in the atmosphere. It comes by chemical molecules. It comes by heat. That's another kind of radiation on heat receptors. It comes through touch and so on, and pain in our body. All of these are flowing in all the time. It goes on then, and this is where the problem now is. The problem is not that part up to the visual cortex in the brain, but beyond that, into the whole perceptual story. That's where we know nothing at all. This is where the story produces, it's a problem like Sheridan's problem. How does something that's got into the brain, and there's only nerve cells firing messages to one another, how does that pattern operation of immense complexity, how does that give us experiences? And I have been obsessed by this from, as I said, 17 or 18 years old right through to now, trying to understand the very nature of my existence, and that is why I speak of sensory impressions and perception and action and so on. But more than that,
και αυτό είναι δυστυχώς κάτι που δεν θα καταλάβει ποτέ κανείς άνθρωπος, γιατί πρέπει, για να αναπτύξει η κατανόηση για ένα σύστημα πρέπει να γίνεις μεγαλύτερος από αυτό το σύστημα. Άρα, αν θες να το κατανοήσεις μέσα από το δικό σου σύστημα, μπορείς να κατανοήσεις μόνο κάτι που είναι πολύ μικρότερο από σένα.
Just imagine perception, vision, hearing. Just imagine the appreciation you can have of sound and harmony. Just imagine the memories that you are given. How you can remember so many things. Your whole life is one long texture of memories. And how you can act as you will. And I do believe, you see, that there are real problems. That the problems are that you, first of all, things come in poured in by your sense organs and coded information of like a dots like this down millions of fibers, and they come into the tremendous patterned organization of your brain, there to go through the most complex spatio-temporal patterning written in space and time at fantastic speed, unimaginable. And as a result, you have an experience. You see a light, you feel a touch, you hear a sound, or you hear many more things. But somehow or other, what is going on in your brain, and that we understand up to a point, turns into a perception. This is a tremendously important problem beyond any solution, but it is a real problem. And we can even find down now a bit, refine where it happens. Then there's the other side. It's all of our experience, but it's customary to deny it for some.
Τι πας ρωτάει πώς γίνεται το rendering στον εγκέφαλό μας.
For some strange reason, the free will. By taking thought, I can make the jump like this, you see. Just because I've never done that before, but I practiced it in my mind after Sir Karl showed it. I can do this, or anything silly that you like. By just taking thought, I can make my muscles do this. How does it happen? You must say this is a real problem. A problem of how taking thought, having a wish to do something, makes, in fact, my...
Αυτό εδώ το κενό που αναφέρει στο τι μπορούμε να κάνουμε και το τι κάνουμε καθημερινά, έρχονται τα social media ουσιαστικά και το γεμίζουν, γιατί οι άνθρωποι κάνουν τελείως άσχετα πράγματα μεταξύ τους. Και οι άνθρωποι έχουν μια περιέργεια να δουν τι είναι δυνατό να κάνει κάποιος. Δηλαδή, βλέπεις κάποιον ο οποίος, τι να σου πω, τρώει μόνο πλαστικά. Βλέπεις κάποιον ο οποίος γλύφει τους τοίχους. Βλέπεις κάποιον ο οποίος πηδάει από αλεξίπτωτα, με αλεξίπτωτα από αεροπλάνα. Βλέπεις κάποιον ο οποίος ανεβαίνει βουνά. Κάποια πράγματα που μπορείς να τα βάλεις στη νόησή σου, αλλά δεν θα πας να τα πραγματοποιήσεις. Και αυτή η φαντασία η δική σου μέσα από το σώμα κάποιου άλλου σου δημιουργεί αυτή την εμπειρία σαν να την έχεις κάνει εσύ. Καλά, δεν θα πούμε για τα σχετικά, την ανάπτυξη της σώτας και τα σχετικά. Όλα αυτά μπαίνουν στην βραχυκόλων αυτό το κομμάτι του rendering του ανθρώπινου εγκεφάλου, ότι είναι σαν να το κάνω εγώ.
My brain, nerve cells, they're changing their performance so that this comes out from my pyramidal tract down to my muscles to make this happen. We all know we can do that. Every one of you. Yet most of you, I suppose, will argue against free will because A, you believe it's against physics, and B, you think it's against physiology. And the answer is, of course, that this is a silly situation. The fact is that physics and physiology are far too primitive yet to explain this.
Well, Sir John, but you are not only believing in the free will, but also in the immortality of souls and the existence of God. And
well, what do we know of ourselves? We wake up in life as a small baby with the earliest memories, and gradually through life our self grows with this string of memories which gives us our unique character and our own personal existence. Everybody else has cells like this. This is the way we came from, we don't know what, from some oblivion. We find ourselves existing and then going on through life, and then at the end we know that death and destruction of the brain follow. Does this mean that life is but an episode between two oblivions? Does the problem of ceasing to be require us to face up to the inevitable end? I would say no. This is going beyond the evidence, scientific evidence. See? It's one thing to prove something scientifically, but it's another thing to say, can it be falsified on scientific grounds? And I would say this cannot be falsified on scientific grounds because science has no explanation at all, as yet, of what our conscious self is. It's not just your genetic coding and your inheritance. I can argue that one out. This will not explain the uniqueness of yourself. You are more than that. Evolution does not explain me to myself. It explains my body and explains many things, but it doesn't explain my own conscious uniqueness. You can ask me the question why. And so when it comes to this, coming to be is a mystery, how I came to exist and find myself with this body as a conscious being, and then the body disintegrates. Am I to believe that's the end and no meaning more than that? I don't know. Science cannot refute it because it has got no explanations of how I come to be, how I am, and how I experience. And therefore...
Όταν λέει science εννοεί υπολογισμός, γιατί η υπολογιστική πολυπλοκότητα για να στηθεί αυτό το σύστημα πήρε κάποια εκατομμύρια χρόνια στο ανθρώπινο είδος και κάποια δισεκατομμύρια χρόνια σε όλα τα βιολογικά είδη στη γη, αλληλεπιδράσεων με το περιβάλλον και συνεχών αλλαγών. Και για να το εξηγήσεις πρέπει ουσιαστικά να κάνεις μια μεταανάλυση, ενώ δεν μπορείς να κάνεις πρόβλεψη για το πώς θα εξελιχθεί. Δηλαδή ακόμα και να το εξηγήσεις πάλι δεν θα μπορείς. Δεν θα είναι επιστημονικό και δεν θα μπορείς να προβλέψεις καινούργιες καταστάσεις. Εκτός και αν κάνεις ο ίδιος τον υπολογισμό. Που ο υπολογισμός είναι απείρου πολυπλοκότητας, οπότε δεν μπορείς να αναπαράγεις το σύμπαν με έναν υπολογισμό. Πρέπει απλά να το τρέξεις. Αυτό είναι η γροθιά στο στομάχι δηλαδή όλων αυτών που προσπαθούν να καταλάβουν ότι βασικά και η κουαντομηχανική αυτό λέει, δηλαδή μπορεί να έχεις δύο περιπτώσεις, στην πιο απλή περίπτωση, και για να δεις τι γίνεται πρέπει να κοιτάξεις και όταν κοιτάξεις το αλλάζεις, άρα δεν ήξερες ποια θα ήταν η κατάσταση αν δεν κοίταζες. Δηλαδή κάθε φορά που κοιτάς κάτι το αλλάζεις, σκέψου όταν κοιτάς την ώρα την έχεις χάσει ήδη. Δηλαδή κοιτάς προηγούμενο σημείο και όταν τη λες πάλι προηγούμενο σημείο. Δηλαδή αν κάτσεις και το σκεφτείς ότι ποτέ δεν μπορείς να έχεις έναν υπολογισμό ο οποίος είναι απόλυτα ακριβής, εκτός από τους μαθηματικούς, οι οποίοι είναι οι μόνοι υπολογισμοί που είναι σωστοί, είναι μαθηματικοί, αλλά είναι οι λύσεις είναι άπειρες, ξέρω εγώ. Δηλαδή αν σου πει κάποιος πες μου το πει, μπορείς να το δώσεις μόνο σαν έναν υπολογισμό, όχι σαν τελική απάντηση. Και νομίζω αυτή η απειροσύνη είναι του υπολογισμού είναι που δυσκολεύει πολύ την ανθρώπινη διανόηση, ότι η απειροσύνη αυτή δεν κάθεται καλά με την καθημερινότητά μας, το πούμε έτσι, που εντάξει.
And therefore it cannot refute the possibility, if you wish it, that there is some more meaning and some other waking up from this oblivion that follows after death. I don't know.
There's first of all the world of physics in which this thing doesn't jump alone, but made jump by me. I call this world of physics world 1, and I call that world of discussion, of our thoughts, which makes me now move in this way, world 2. That world 2 is the world of our mind, of discussions on. Obviously, this isn't pure physics, this is world 1 plus world 2. Now, there are very many physicists who believe that world 1 is complete, that world 2 is a kind of, yes, perhaps existing, but anyway, a parallel world of world 1. If I make this glass jump, then it is my brain which makes the glass jump. And my brain belongs really to world 1 and not to world 2. Now, I don't believe in this story, that is to say, I do not believe in the completeness of physics. I do not believe that physics is a complete system, closed towards other systems and capable of explaining everything in physical terms, everything that happens. I do believe there is a world 1 of physics. I do believe that there's a world 2 of the mind. I do believe that the world 2 of the mind actually influences the world 1 and changes the world 1. And I even believe, and this I take to be a kind of strong argument for the existence of world 1 and not especially world 2, I believe in a world 3. And this world 3 is the world of the products of the human mind. It is the world of theories, the world of thoughts.
Παρεπτόντως ο Καρλ Ποππερ είναι ο επινοητής της έννοιας της ανοιχτής κοινωνίας, πάνω στην οποία βασίστηκε ο Σόρος για να δημιουργήσει όλες τις μη κερδοσκοπικές εταιρείες.
The world of pictures, but it is not the world of our feelings.
Δεν ξέρω αν έχει σχέση με τα ανοιχτά σύνορα και με την παγκοσμιοποίηση, αλλά νομίζω εκεί ότι είναι.
When we look at pictures, that belongs to world 2. World 3 is the world of content of thought. To the world 3 belongs science, knowledge, art, and other things. Now, I want to say, first of all, quite straightforward and simply, that world 3 very strongly influences world 2, and through world 2, world 1. If you see a new machine, then this machine has been conceived by some world 2 object as a third world 3 object. It really was first a plan, a blueprint. But before it became a blueprint even, it was an idea, a thing as such, in world 3. And our world 1 is constantly changed by world 3, for example, by the world of science, and partly ruined by the world of science, partly improved by the world of science. These are different things. Now, the old problem of determinism versus indeterminism, I regard as the problem of the completeness of world 1 or not, whether world 1 is complete or not. And I assert that world 1 is not complete. And world 3 plays a very great role in this.
Yes, well, I want to just come in and add something to that. At the present time, I'm engaged in a lot of disputation about what is called reductionism. Can everything, including life and mind, be reduced to physics and chemistry? This is the claim of the people, that you said, the physicists who want to put everything in world 1, pure materialism. Everything is explained by energy and matter going about all their various known motions. Now, when I'm presented with this story, somebody says everything, including biology and mind, is reducible to physics and chemistry. I always ask, pray tell me, what is physics and chemistry? This startles them quite a lot, because they don't know what to say, and you've got to help them then. Physics and chemistry isn't this kind of matter or any kind of physical experiment or apparatus. This is not it. It isn't even all the books and so on, not as such. In the end, what it turns out to be, it is the thoughts and ideas of physicists and chemists in explaining natural phenomena. If they only accept world 1, they have in fact got themselves into a stultifying position. They have described everything as being in the world of physics and chemistry, and the world of physics and chemistry turns out to be the world of ideas and thoughts and theories of physicists and chemists, which is certainly not what they want. And so they are driven into accepting these other worlds as you described. There's no way out.
The incompleteness of world 1 can be shown with a very beautiful and very simple example. All of you knew this interesting problem of mirrors.
Αυτό που λέει η τέχνη μιμείται τη ζωή, η φυσική μιμείται τις ιδέες, αλλά οι ιδέες παράγονται από τη φυσική, γιατί η ύλη ουσιαστικά παράγει ιδέες. Άρα έχει μια σειρά ηλεκτρονίων τα οποία θέλουν να αυτοπροσδιοριστούν για να κατανοήσουν τον εαυτό τους. Έχει ηλεκτρόνια που προσπαθούν να καταλάβουν ηλεκτρόνια.
Mirrors standing opposite each other. In these mirrors we see the image of each mirror in the other mirror, and this mirror is reflected against in the first mirror, and this case goes on.
Ρε φίλε, λοιπόν, αυτό ήταν ένα από τα μεγαλύτερα μου, μια από τις μεγαλύτερες σφαζοκεφαλιές από 5 χρονών, όταν είχα μπει στην οικοδομή του θείου μου και υπήρχε ένας καθρέφτης στα δεξιά και ένας καθρέφτης στα αριστερά. Και οι δύο καθρέφτες αντανακλώντουσαν απείρως ο ένας μέσα στον άλλον και δεν κατέληγε πουθενά αυτό το πράγμα. Και η απορία μου ήταν αν κάνουμε τους καθρέφτες πάρα πολύ μεγάλους. Τι να σου πω, σε διαστάσεων, πώς το λένε, οικοδομής. Όλη η άκρη όψη της οικοδομής να έχει ένα καθρέφτη και όλη η απέναντι οικοδομή να έχει άλλον ένα καθρέφτη και να είναι τελείως παράλληλα η μία στην άλλη, θα μπορέσουμε να δούμε ποτέ πού καταλήγει το φως, δηλαδή πού καταλήγει η αντανάκλαση. Η τελευταία αντανάκλαση πού είναι, σε ποιον από τους δύο καθρέφτες ανήκει.
Forever and ever. In principle, there is no end to it. If there is an end to it, it is because the mirrors are not very good. But an ideal mirror goes on forever and ever and is therefore incomplete. Now, my doctrine is that physics and chemistry and science and knowledge never can mirror themselves completely. That leads to a similar infinite, a so-called infinite regress. The real big point is the physical world complete, yes or no? The answer is it cannot be complete, it must necessarily lead to an infinite...
Εντάξει, είναι τόσο τέλειο να είναι κάτι άπειρο, γιατί αν είναι κάτι πολύ καλό, δεν χρειάζεται ουσιαστικά να συγκλίνει κάπου ή να αποκλίνει κάπου. Απλά μπορεί να συνεχίζει στο άπειρο. Πώς να το πω, δηλαδή δεν χρειάζεται να καταλήγει κάπου κάτι. Μπορεί να είναι απλά τέλειο και να συνεχίζεται τέλεια. Δηλαδή η έννοια δημιουργεί μια τρομερή σταθερότητα αυτή η απειροσύνη. Η τελειότητα σίγουρα πρέπει να είναι άπειρη.
Infinite regress, infinite series of worlds which go further and further and further in the description of the physical world. And for that reason I'm an indeterminist. And this indeterminism is very important for men. Not only that we can now trust our free will feelings, which is very important, but it is very important in another sense. Namely, we all know that we are in our thoughts, in our actions, in our doing, contributing to world 3. I see in the third world the object of human activity, the object of human endeavor. I do not see in the third world something like Plato, who thought there was a third world of ideas in themselves, independent of men, always true, never false, and so on. My third world is consisting of problems, difficulties, mistakes, theories, true theories, false theories, everything which man produces belongs in my idea to the third world.
I will add some more, just to make it concrete for you. A stone axe made by Paleolithic man is in the third world.
Yes.
This is to us a message from Paleolithic man to say that he was able to design and sculpt stone for purposes, and he often made things of great beauty. And as you go through history, the archaeologists now have done tremendous valuable service to us by studying and displaying the whole story of man from primitive times. Unbelievably magnificent things were made so many thousands of years ago. This is the story of man creating. This is the story of how man made the world free, the world of all culture and art and criticism and science and literature, everything that you can imagine worthwhile in life. The whole of civilization and culture is world free, and that is the essence of living.
I agree again to add something. Namely, in my opinion, what is really characteristic of man and of the human third world and of the human product is language, human language. And here again, the most characteristic thing is the moment when man...
Έχω ανάψει full. Θα αρχίσει να μιλάνε για τη γλώσσα και το λόγο.
And man was able to tell a story. To tell a story which wasn't true, and thereby to invent the difference between truth and falsehood. The idea of truth and falsehood, which I think is one of the most important ideals of mankind, is the result of the discovery of the lie, of the falsehood. It is the result of the man who first told the falsehood in order to escape some uncle.
Ο Ρίκι Τζερβέις έχει βγάλει ίσως την καλύτερη ταινία, η ανακάλυψη του ψεύδους, The Invention of Lying. Άμα κάτσεις και τη δεις, βασικά πρέπει να το ξέρεις κιόλας τον τύπο, για να την εκτιμήσεις, αλλά και να μην το ξέρεις, θα δεις κάτι και θα σου τρυπήσει λίγο το μυαλό. Αυτό. Μπείτε να τη δείτε.
Unpleasant consequences in what he had to tell. Bees have a language too, but bees cannot lie.
So you believe in falsification?
This is partly because I believe in falsification. The discovery of lies or the discovery of falsehood is very important. But the thing I now really want to stress that I believe is human language, which is, strangely enough, the only inherited tool of mankind.
But I want to just come in now. Language is not inherited, only the potentialities.
Of course.
But then the potentialities to carve and to sculpt and to paint are inherited in the same way.
Of course, the potentialities we have. I know that newborn babies do not talk. I also know that we don't all talk the same language. I can't talk one word of Dutch except kan niet verstaan. So I am very well aware that language is not in that sense inherited. It is inherited as a disposition. As an incredibly strong need of man to speak. As we see, for example, from the autobiography of Helen Keller, who was blind and deaf and could not speak and had no means of formulating words until her teacher one day gave her a signal for water, took her hand, put her hand into water, streaming water, and gave her a certain signal. And here, suddenly, the idea, this signal, this tact signal means water. This idea suddenly occurred to Helen Keller and made her to a human